then I'll turn to Senator Cardin. Senator Paul.
This would be amendment number 3 about basic research. As I mentioned in my opening with the first amendment about the National Science Foundation, it is a perpetual source of waste in government. But waste in research is not limited to the National Science Foundation. NIH, DOE, DOD all have funded wasteful projects. What is more troubling is that we don't have uniform standards about how research grants are approved. At NSF, an applicant can actually request which peers will review their application. So basically, one guy could say, hey, I'd like one of my peers to be that guy who studied Japanese quail on cocaine. That's the guy I want on my review committee. And he could say, well, maybe I'd like the woman who studied the mating call of the Panamanian frog. I think should be a good vote on my committee. The people asking for the money are choosing their peers. This is why it doesn't get better decade after decade. Nobody does anything. We won't even authorize. We haven't authorized this in a decade. So we really should reform how grants are given out so we have some ability to try to get something better done here. Even more troubling than creating your own reviewers is the idea that after a grant is issued, they can be sub-granted to others without any transparency. This is how we found the Neil Armstrong. $700,000 was going to autism. Most of us, even me, might acknowledge the government could have a role in studying autism. But the money went to study Neil Armstrong's statement on the moon, one small step for man or one small step for mankind. That was sub-granted. It wasn't even what the original thing was supposed to be to go for autism. So this needs to be reformed. It's never reformed. Decade after decade after decade. We didn't even bother to authorize the National Science Foundation. My amendment seeks to make a uniform process across government, one that includes objective reviewers assessing a grant's merit coming from competing scientific disciplines. So if you want to study Japanese quail on cocaine, maybe there ought to be a diabetic researcher on the committee or a breast cancer researcher or one of the bigger diseases where people would probably more acknowledge money should go, instead of having 4 people who are doing bizarre behavioral research like yours approving your research. We also should have a taxpayer watchdog on each of these committees. I think we also need more downstream reporting on what's going on and more control of subcontracting. This is a bill that I think would be a great reform, not only for what's going on with doubling the size of the National Science Foundation, but I think if you're going to do it without reform, it's a real disservice to the money we are spending, and I'd urge a yes vote.